My name is Jessica Holyfield and I am a professional dancer, dance choreographer, and dance educator based out of the southeast of the US. And today we're going to be reviewing and watching and reacting to Body Rock 2016's first place winner, Just Jerk. Now I know this was released many years ago and I have seen this before. It's been a hot minute since I've seen it though, so I feel like I get to relive some really incredible moments from this set. And this is going to be the front row view. So that probably means there is a chance I may miss some sort of details that may be picked up from a formation standpoint if it was a wide view, but I feel like we'll be able to pick up some more performance-esque things from this take. So without further ado, let's get started. There we go. And I know this was right before they like really put their name on the map from a global standpoint. So well, they have a little bit of grit about them with this performance. Okay, Young Jay. Really picked a great costume. Where this got J-Ho in the front right here. You're about to pop off. Got some waving right there. That's S1 in the middle. He's the resident popper of the group, doing some cobra, some pulls, isolations. Love this formation choice. Ugh. Always a fan when there's a ton of waving variations. Ooh. Very nice. Just the pocket is so I'm getting goosebumps all over again from that. Just that kills me. I love this mix. I remember the group, I think they're from, I don't know if they're from Denmark. But they used this for their Got Talent set. It was a duo. The Robot Boys, I think it's what they're called. And this was their mix. It's just so iconic. So it's so nice to see people, you know, gotta do robot technique with it. You better go. Visual is always so insane. Something that they're known for is how freaking clean they are. And that's what makes this work, because they do some simplistic movement, very fundamental and foundational movement, but they do it so well, and within the essence and posture. Like, this setup's insane. Ooh, the transitions are seamless. And whenever you have costumes like this, it is really hard to hide anything, so you just gotta be good. And the energy just keeps going. Yes. 3, 4. Just the dynamics of the running and lowering and getting higher. Ready for this right here. Blew my mind when they did that the first time. And they're about to, God, this is probably, oh, I forgot about this part. The patience. I remember that pull. This is an iconic moment. You better slay. I love the culture timbre they have. Just the music choice for this is so captivating. Yep. Nice classic add-on here. And they have somebody hiding back here, but they're very discreet in their choice. And then they said, let's go. Oh, yes. Yes. Their visuals is what kicked butt in this, because their formations and their visual choices, right here. And this is it's so nuanced within their culture. And it just feels so them. And I think that's the key point in all this, is that not many groups that compete in body rock can do a set like this and it looks so authentic. And in that very end, they reach up. And they're not done. Yes. Yes! There's something about just a slow rise up after just doing what you did and finishing just like that. Ooh. Insane. Insane. I still to this day, I think it's one of the most iconic routines that has ever graced the body rock stage. So let's talk about it. Gonna take this, we're gonna lower it to 0.75, we're going from the beginning. So this very beginning, first, let me note, if you didn't know already, with body rock, a lot of times you have people, a huge group. They were a fairly small group in comparison to their competitors. Secondly, I believe they were one of the only, if the only group that did not leave the stage once. Everybody participated on stage the entire time. Doesn't mean that they were all in motion the whole time. You had your features and you had some people that were low, but everybody was visible at all times, which is something, huge kudos to do that, because that's really difficult to maintain captivation like that with that number for that long to that degree of difficulty. So I always give props, mad respect for them for doing it, and I know that they worked really hard on that set. So I am honored to even be able to just kind of look through this and give my 2 cents per se. So in this beginning, they go, get it poppin'. So that song, Get It Poppin', they have a lot of fundamentals that are within the family of popping. Now, they're not actually popping, it's very minor. So like this section here, he's ticking, which is a sequence of pops that go from point A to point B. So if you wanted to know that kind of dynamic, that Young Jay, I believe is who that was, and he is, I believe, the leader of Just Jerk, and I think he still is, both him and J-Ho, and they're the front 2 people here. They do a great job with really being clear on what dynamic they want to hit or what technique. So there's some waving that goes on right here. Notice that whenever they did their waving, they curled all the way through the fingers. A lot of groups, when they integrate waving into their set, they leave off the fingers. The reason why I know this is because I was a culprit of doing that as well at the beginning of my waving journey as an artist. So I'm more sensitive to seeing that when I see other people attempt waving. So they did a great job of fully using the fingers to where they had the same degree of dynamic as the arm right there. Yeah. And that's really important to see because it makes it more full. Blah, blah, blah. And they do a great job of using their head as well. I know I stopped this at weird places, but blah, 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 blah. So they choose what sound and they figure out 15 different ways to interpret that sound, and they show you very cleanly, mind you. And it's a really good skill set to have. Here we go. He said, And notice that they did a speed change, and in order and how people do that, if you wanted to take a look at this, is they put your weight on your heels, and you want to make sure everything is all nice and locked up, and the only thing that's moving you is your legs. A lot of times when we practice that type of technique, you think about moving your body, you think about moving your knees, but it's really a mix of making everything on the same page at all times. And most of your weight is catered to your heels as you do it, but it just depends on what motion you're doing in that. So notice they move. Notice that those toes were slightly lifted as they rotated, and then they dropped them. In S1, the resident popper of the group, it makes sense for him to be in the center there because his pops are the most, carry the most essence, because he's a part of that community within Korea. They're about to do waves. Then they go into chest pops with the arms to the outside to kind of show full range. So notice there, that motion that they did in waving is not necessarily difficult, but having everybody do it at the same time in the same way is the more difficult part about it. So, but having them just do their rolls and they come right back up, it's a pretty basic sequence, but the positioning and the degree of their speed does factor a role into that. And then coming into here, they did just 4 simple chest pops. Once again, it's about the performance and the charisma and the essence and how you choose to execute it. So that was really nice moments there. They waved out and back in. Notice their choices, and I caught them in midair. Drop to the floor. Notice that they've always done a really good job with their choice of how they frame their featured dancers. So notice that everybody has a position, they have a place, they are all framing and creating fullness and depth without taking away from what he's doing. Of course, lighting helps, but this really, the lighting is really just the tip of the iceberg in the sense of what makes it so captivating. In that section there, I did mention it in my initial reaction, is he's doing something called cobra, which cobra stems from you look like a snake, right? It's a sense of snaking, where giving that illusion. That's what a brand of waving that is. So there is a lot of waving in this. And also notice that it was important how those people set up their formation, is that the front people peeled up, and a lot of times you use your hips to get that momentum and rotation to get up. And I don't think they really, well, I think they came from the ground, but they have to use, they didn't have a lot of prep. A lot of times people use a rotation to get up. They didn't do that. And that's what makes it surprising more so. You know, they use their hands, but really it's just, they just got really used to going up, just using the hips, but without having to prep it to come up. And that shows fluency and maturity within that particular skill, which made it so much of a surprise. What makes this section look so difficult or so intriguing is because of their choices they made to their music. Because I'm going to show you, I'm muting that, and we're going to go back. So when you just look at what they're doing, they're just switching their weight between their legs, their shoulders, shoulder, chest, down, hit, roll up. But, and I'm going to be honest, right there, it just looks like a simple sequence. But when you have it with the music, wah, 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 this music set isn't very popular, right? So a lot of these songs are not, well, again, at pop, and yeah, but this kind of mix isn't super popular in our Western culture. So it is interesting, like there's that extra sense of surprise because you have them dancing to something that appears difficult. They're hitting certain sounds that you're not expecting, and it really comes across like, wow, they just did something super cool, in which they did. It's still cool and it's super awesome, but I know when we initially watch something, things appear much cooler than they seem. But all that to say, you too can do that section if you just practice the order of the ISOs as well as the music and just getting used to what hits when. And that's with a lot of these things. That right there, that whole little section, I love the fact that they did movement all together, then he switched to this side, and then he cranked it around, and they just switched with that dynamic. Always such a fan of that. Looks so cool. Do some more waving. Traces right there. That's an example of a trace. So a trace is whenever you're doing a wave and you have a hand and it's controlling your wave. Nothing changes with my wave, but it looks like my arm is controlling where my wave is going. And that's a really nice dynamic that just adding to any piece, especially to this section, brings a level of difficulty, of fluency with what you're doing. Boom, boom. Love that. 3, 4. Now so I am kind of stuck between locking and whacking. Here's why. That section, that's locking for sure. That's a locking posture and that's a locking groove. But what they do after is a lot of how they use their chest is very similar to how whackers utilize their chest. And because there's no rock or bounce as they do lock into a position, it was hard for me to establish whether they were locking or whacking. I hope my analysis of that was accurate to some degree. But this section had a locking nuance. This section right here, that's where I started to get confused, where I was like, are they locking? Or is it just an influence of locking with an influence of whacking? Because they do look similar in structure of strikes, but the posture and essence is different, and the cultures and communities are different, obviously, at least with the wrist rolls. Locking has its own fundamentals, but with whacking, there's the posture and the carriage of the chest is different. So that's why I just kept silent in my initial reactions, because I really needed to think through it, and that's why I waited till now to really talk about it. Okay. But notice that they're pretty stationary with the lower half of their body, and that I think it's because they really wanted you to focus on the upper half. This part is so nice because, and that was a nice little crump, like I think it was like just a crump, like a step that you would see, and they set the tone really well in this section. Notice the movement they're not doing is so complex or polyrhythmic, but it has such an essence about it, and the quality of their commitment is something to really note here. So as they're just doing these movements in these grooves, because they're taking up multiple counts like this right here, they add establishing the groove, then they polyrhythmic it out, but it's still not so dense like it was earlier. And I just love the shift there, and that's something I've always loved about Just Jerk, is they just feel fundamental, but they put such a spice to it to where it's readable, but it's very pleasing to read, you know. So that movement there, they integrate a lot of bops, ticks, dime stops, a lot of those there. And like I said, Robot Boys. So I will say though, it is hard to use this song and make it innovative whenever you have such an example set already on media. That right there is a direct nuance from, or directly inspired from the Robo Boys from Denmark. I really hope I'm right on that, because one of them did this like that was a part of their Got Talent set. So I'm going to very safely assume that they got inspiration from that. And then once again, he's going into his cobra, or snaking, some waving here, turn down. I love that formation visual because they're going from the outside to the inside and they're just rotating down. So they're hitting the same part of the music, but they're interpreting it. They are being very static in their choice and allowing their feet to kind of move them. They're utilizing their whole body. So it just makes the routine look more full. And when you don't have a ton of people, like what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 people, I may be wrong on that, but when you only have 9 people on stage and you're competing against crews that have 20 or 15 plus, like that's definitely, you're at a disadvantage when it comes to your set and the fullness and being captivating and being aggressive, or being that kind of holding attention from an audience. It is harder. So kudos to them for being smart in their choices. Once again, they're hitting. Nice transition as they come up. This part right here, this is the thumbnail of the video for a good reason. Just their setup, their confidence, their focus. They are here to perform. Now, I don't think they were expecting to win, because based on what I was hearing from other videos and reactions and stuff, I don't think they were expecting to win at all. But just being able to get that type of illusion to work, you have to have everybody on the same page of how high or how low you want your arm to go, or how out and how in. And they committed just their arm for the first half, which is why it had that kind of aesthetic. And then as it went out, they allowed their body to move with it. And that's why there was more depth in the second waving connection here. And then they're going to go, there we go. Yep. Maybe this transition. And they always try to do a good job of hiding lifts with other movements in there. And I've always noticed that. I'm gonna be honest, I've always noticed when they do a lift or a setup, but it's never bothered me, because whenever they perform like this, they're so in it, like I mentioned. I just want to be in it with them and kind of ignore the setup in the back and just be in that moment with who they want me to focus on. And that's a very kudos thing for them, for me to actively ignore what's going on, because I just care about the effort they're putting into their performance. And I love the double, so they kept that motion that they did in the beginning, but they doubled it up and they made it more central versus to the corner, because they want the visual to be more in the center with both arms versus just showcasing one angle on the side. So that was really nice. Jump, jump. And that's really nice too with their mix. So kudos to whoever remixed their song, because just having an explosion in the back, like that, just it creates levels of hype whenever you feel like there's a lag a little bit in the music, or there's a lag in the movement, or the movement is starting to feel like I'm kind of getting used to this dynamic, or I'm kind of getting used to the style that they're doing. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe this video makes you feel that way, and I'm sorry, but yeah. And then whenever you see them create those little pockets of explosion, like this right here, just having the usage of the head, tying the head around again. And really, at the end of the day, this movement, whenever you slow it down, the movement itself is pretty not one-dimensional, but it's not overly complex. Like, they're not going back, throw, back, whatever. They're keeping a movement, but they're making it go on multiple sides, and that's what makes it kind of not gimmicky, but it makes it's buildable. Their movements are buildable, and I think that really works in their favor with how they choose to utilize their formations. And that's why their formations are so nice. Like this right here, all they're doing is running and dropping and running and dropping. There's nothing overly complicated about it, but it goes back to commitment to what you're doing. And the person in the center is doing barrel jumps, which is, it's difficult to do a ton of them in one go, especially knowing that you're halfway through your set. You've already done a ton of body control, and then you're going to be throwing that out there. Also knowing you got a crap ton to get through after this moment. It's super impressive, their choices of where they choose to explode. And then they come back in, and then into this part. I remember at that time, when I saw this the first time, I was like, whoa. That was the first time I had ever seen somebody do a speed change like that. I've seen that move before, but I personally hadn't seen it done in that way with that type of music. So that was a really big captivating moment for me personally when I saw this right here. And then this section right here, I think is probably one of my favorite sections I've ever had Just Jerk do, like I've ever seen them do. Just sitting, he just said that so heavy. Boom. It just sounds so much like he is emulating his instrument so well. When you think about this music and the fact that a lot of the instruments that we're hearing, I can kind of like demonstrate like what it is. I know it's I forgot what it's called, but it's an instrument that kind of lays down and you pick at it. I have seen people play that before in their culture. So that is a cultural instrument that we're hearing. And that's what I love, is that it just sounds like them. Like they're paying ode and they're paying tribute to their culture in a way that nobody else there can. And just the one head movement and dynamically hitting it that way really causes a response. Jae-ho did a great job there. And the other people interacted at really interesting and off-guard times, and that's what also caught people off guard, which I think is what helped them win in this case too. Everybody comes back together. We have some people laying down over here. So not everybody, they're doing the same upper body, but not everybody is like laying down. Some of the people are over to the sides, people are standing up, and then you have these other people that are central with him. They are, you know, that's really helping. They're framing their set really well here. And this is also a breather. We're gonna call it what it is. They are taking a break before they pop off once or twice more final times. Ooh, nice. Once again, did some more ISO integration. If you noticed, it is a very similar pattern than what they did early on, but I think it ties their set together well, and they did it in a different formation. And they had other things going on too, so it doesn't bother me at all. Then they do an add-on, ding, ding. Yeah. And I really like the usage of the twisting of their legs. I don't know if it's inspired by Toy Man, like the twisting of the body like Toy Man. It's really not with how they're utilizing their toes, but I do like just noticing that how they're getting is they're swiveling their feet, bringing them back in. Their feet are what's controlling their upper body, going from one place to another, so their body's reacting to their legs. And I just like that relationship, and everybody, notice everyone's committing to it. No one is too far in and no one is too far out, and that shows their teamwork, and it shows their cooperation as a team, that even though some of them, they're all different heights, you just don't, there are women and there are men in this group, and it's something to note that you cannot tell the difference in movement quality between the men and the women, and you can't really tell the difference in their movement quality from people who specialize in different genres of movement either. So that's a really important thing to note in this too, that it's just that whole thing too, they just hit everything. And then of course you have Young Jae right there, have more of a drag, like a imperial sound is what I would call it. They still have that organic timbre from what was already happening. They're integrating some more waving technique back in here with some ticking right here. So just that movement there, just using their toes and their body to kind of slide across the floor. Now, I don't know the material of their costumes in relation to the floor. It could have been super slick, or it could have been very traction heavy, but the fact is that you can't tell, and that just shows their practice and having to rely upon their hands, and they use their toes and their shoes to kind of press them going from one place to the other. And then they had Young Jae kind of wave from one side to the other to really show that relationship. Did some footwork here. That was a really nice transition, and it caught your attention enough for everybody else to transition without being too noticed. A little bit of puppeting, like a triggering him and him responding as they move it, but they didn't keep it stationary. They moved him in a way that you normally don't see when you have that kind of circumstance. Very simple. That right there. What's crazy, everybody started, so it actually starts, and then they chest roll over. So they start on this side, they wave the arm as it goes through the chest, and then it waves down. So it waves from one side to the other, and then as I hit this side, the next person next to me, they hit their left shoulder, and that's how you create that response all the way down. And so I would assume that they didn't have counts. You could do 1 iana, 2 iana, 3 iana, 4 iana, but a lot of times you just get used to the muscle memory of, you just feel it whenever you're doing it to music for long enough. Like, you can just feel where your pocket is in your spot in that line. So I think it's a mix of maybe timing, but it's also a mix of trusting that the person next to you is going to hit their timing every time, so you can set up your timing. Nice and slow. They have a nice moment. Notice they have a lot of pockets of moments where they're resting. That is great because it makes the big explosion moments more impactful, because they actually have the energy to do it, and it doesn't look like they're tired. So they're really committing to their character through the intention and through the fierceness of their performance, while while just existing on stage. And that's what makes all the moments matter. And that's why I think they were awarded the win for this competition in particular. They incorporated the barrel run, and then they did some martial arts influenced movement here. I'm gonna assume Taekwondo, because South Korea, that is their martial arts affiliation is Taekwondo. So we're gonna assume that that's what it is, which makes me think, I wonder if this is a Taekwondo inspired outfit. That's what I'm going to lock in as my answer. That was a real yell. He said, "Ah, we are almost done," is what that meant. This part right here, nice setup. Even when they're just having a moment there, turn, you think it's done? That breath was real, because they're like, we're about to keep going, punch. Having to do a lot of these movements, having to do a lot of those really quick, fast movements and utilizing the back, that's really hard to do when you're not used to controlling your body. But they are known for their control over a lot of really quick movements. I would say a choreographer that is from the West Coast that I think does a lot of those types of movements, Franklin Yu. Keone Madrid is another example of really fast, quick movement, but it's still impactful. And I think that they did a fabulous job with it, and I think it resonated with this community well. You think they're done because of the music was like, oh, like they're done. No, they're not done. And they're still going to be intricate, and they're still going to be piecing everything together. A full rotation of their movement. That I know is an influence off of traditional, I think like traditional dance of, I think I've seen it in Shenyun, right? But I know Shenyun is Chinese, so I don't know if if there's a crossover between all of that, but seeing that's really hard to get the rotation right with all of those people. Then they did all that and they come down, crowd's going wild, it's intense. You never know if they're done because they just keep going for it, and then they finish with the crest on the back. This was wonderful. That was great. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope I was helpful in some way. I know that I was trying to figure out a couple of things alongside with you. I do remember the first time I watched this, I was just floored, and I was just so captivated by their choices that they made, and I'm just so honored at the ability of where I am now as a dance teacher and as a choreographer. I'm able to appreciate the choices they made to where I'm able to express them to you. So thank you so much for watching, like I said, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye guys.